Well, got it. Okay, I can officially welcome everybody to New Ideas for a New Year. Now, this is a great group. We have some people who are teaching live and in person. We have some people who are teaching virtually. So I'm going to try to, talk about things that will be appropriate for each. And please, if you have an idea of something that will work better for one thing or another thing, or anytime you have an idea, raise your hand, let me know. I mean, we really should talk to each other. We're a small enough group that we can do that, and that will make this even better. I'll be doing some PowerPoint slides, and then I'll take it off for a while so that we can really just talk to each other. I have entirely too much information here for you, and so I'll send that to you afterwards because it's unlikely that we're going to get to everything tonight. So this is what we'll do tonight. Let's see if, okay. So we're gonna do a little bit of a Devar Torah, a little bit of text study. We're gonna talk about all the different themes of the holiday and try to think where we can get our inspiration for that. Talk about the Golden Circle by Simon Sinek. This is really sort of how I live and think and what we do. And then we're going to talk about creative ideas through the age. And for each age, I have a list of books, sensory activities, and activities. I'm sure we're not going to get to every little thing. I may just send you the list of books later, but there are a couple stories that I found that I'm just absolutely crazy about. Maybe you already know them. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions and answers the whole time. So let's sort of get started with our Rosh Hashanah themes. There are a lot of themes for Rosh Hashanah, and originally I was hoping that this meeting tonight we could talk about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Simchas Torah. I think that's a lot. So I don't think we're going to get to all of those. I'm really going to focus on Rosh Hashanah, maybe a little bit of Yom Kippur, and if you are interested in getting together before Sukkot, I have tons of materials for that too. But we think about it as the birthday of the world. That's what we talk about, and we're going to focus a little bit on that, but not the birthday party aspect, but what it means to have like the birth of the world. And new beginnings, how we can set goals, with children. And also thinking about creating a sacred space, either in your school or I'm not sure how everybody is going to be celebrating the holidays or even Shabbat if you're like staying together within the classroom. So how do you change? How do you think about that? There's a lot about introspection and reflection and, having new perspectives and new ways to look at things. We're going to talk about that, how we might use lenses, colors, all of those kinds of things to have children think differently and see differently. Of course, it's about friendship. It's about apologies and forgiveness. And that's really a very difficult thing to do. I don't know. I think that's difficult for adults too. Like we say, I'm sorry all the time, but really forgiving somebody is very difficult. And really owning up to a mistake that you've made is also really difficult. So we know it's really challenging for children. And how we wish other people well and develop empathy. So that's really a lot. And of course, there's food. I didn't even mention food yet, but that's a big deal too. So I want to talk a little bit about the birthday of the world. This picture is from a book called Adam's Animals. And when I thought of the birthday of the world, I really thought that it was like the beginning, and God said, let there be light. But tradition says that the birthday of the world was really on day 6 after human beings were created. And that was a surprise to me. I didn't realize that. I really thought it was kind of the beginning. But I just want to read this passage from the Torah, and I didn't write it all out because there's a lot of words, but just listen to anything that sort of sparks your attention, makes you want to ask a question, and then we'll just have a moment to discuss that.
You froze.
I froze? Horror. Can you hear me at least? Okay, very good. And God said, let the earth bring forth all kinds of living creatures, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth and their kind, And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps upon the earth after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree on which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, where there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Now that's a lot of text, right? That's a lot of text. But what hits you about that? Is there anything that strikes you about that enormous day? Because it was a very big day. What strikes you about that?
Well,
Please.
so I think the responsibility of humans to now take care of everything that came before, like we were there, because really without that, I mean, would everything that was before us have survived? I don't know.
Oh, that's really interesting, because if we have dominion over, would all of these things continue to exist if we are not like tending the earth, etc.?
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's a really good question. So if we're celebrating the earth's birthday, where does that responsibility come in that celebration?
It's a big responsibility.
Anybody else? Was there anything that struck anybody from that, thinking about that?
Yes. Extracurricular 200. Volunteer at a local animal rescue.
Anybody? What is Rosh Hashanah to you? What is it?
So what strikes me is that we're all created in God's image. So aside from the fact that man and women should be treated as equal, aside from that, it is that all of us are created in God's image, and that no matter who we are, no matter how we present ourselves, no matter how we, children with special needs, children with no special, I mean, we all have special needs, let's face it,
Yes,
especially this one. We're in God's image. This is how God wanted us to be. And then we should be proud of it.
yes. And celebrate everybody else's
Uniqueness.
uniqueness.
That's the word.
Spark of the divine.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. Anybody else?
Do you want to, is this a goal for Rosh Hashanah, or is that what you're looking for?
I just, I like to start with a piece of text, something that sort of roots us. And I'm just wondering how it makes you feel, because that is the very next thing, actually, with Cheryl. It is sort of the perfect segue to the next thing I was going to talk about. So thank you.
So I was just going to say that we should all live mindfully and not, yearn for yesterday or tomorrow. Just live in the moment.
That's beautiful. Thank you. But this is what I wanted to think about, this the Tishrei holidays. I did, like, originally I was going to talk about all of those things. But why are we doing this, right? What is it? What's the why? What is driving us? And like all of our holidays, there are so many parts of a Jewish holiday, right? There's the story of the holiday, it's ritual objects, it's observance, it's music, the special foods, and of course there are books. But you know, what is the thing that is compelling for you? Why are we teaching it? What is the thing that is really of great meaning to you about this holiday? You know, maybe we would focus on a particular value or a particular aspect. It's a lot of information. And even with the 2 weeks that we might have, you know, leading up to high holidays, with the little children in our care, we're not going to get that much in. So let's think about why we're teaching what we're teaching. So it's the why. What is important for you, and what do you hope children are going to learn? What are they going to come away with? When these kids, you know, experience actual Rosh Hashanah, what are you hoping that they've learned from you? That what are their feelings? Do you want them to feel like something sensory? Is it a memory? Do you want them recognizing certain objects? And what is it like, what's important to you personally as an educator? And what are you going to love teaching? If somebody tells you, you know, you have to teach about every kind of apple there is, and you don't really like apples, that's not so much fun. So we have to get to the meaning of, why are we talking about apples? We talk about apples because it's a representative of something sweet. It's a representative of the world. It's representative of Torah that's good through and through. And so we can eat the whole apple. But there are other ways to represent sweetness and goodness and roundness and the earth. So I'm just asking again to try to think for yourself, what is really important for you as an educator, and what do you want to teach? What's really fun for you to teach? And the last thing is, what are your families expecting? Or conversely, if you know, if your director says, I expect that every child knows X, well, that's also something to take into consideration. So what are our expectations? What are families' expectations, and how do we manage them? I do want to say that this is a particularly challenging time. I don't think that's a surprise for anyone. And I just read something earlier today that the only thing that this one particular teacher wants to teach every day is, you are safe, you are loved, you don't need to be stressed out here, and then maybe you can learn something. So we know that there may be a different order of things that aren't important. We also want to talk about what's appropriate for the age of your particular classroom. I think that's a big deal too. Okay, I have to turn the air conditioner back on. It may be noisy, and I apologize if it is. So the second part of the circle, after we get to the why, is how are we going to teach these things? How do we transmit the love, the nurturing, the whatever we feel, whether it's our responsibility to the earth? And these aren't the activities, this is how we think about it. And I know that in these times, we may also have to consider certain accommodations. I don't know how you're doing sensory bins. Are you having individual sensory bins? You know, I'm curious about that. Like, are there particular ways that you are teaching now because of the pandemic that you would not necessarily have taught before? Do you have to keep children apart from each other? Is that, you know, something that you're trying to do? And how will you do that in a way that shows love and affection? Anybody want to answer that question?
So, Cheryl, you want to go?
No, well, I was just going to say, like, it is different times now. We have to keep our distance, but you always put out objects like real shofars made from the ram's ears, and the kids love that. They get excited when you tell them where it came from, and And then I know years ago we used to like clean it off with alcohol and let them blow it, but we can't do that now.
Yes, remember that? I remember doing that in particular.
You're right. So it's important to put things pertaining to the holiday out, around the classroom.
Okay, so there's still going to be the, kind of physical, here are the things that, and when you have a shofar, here's my shofar right here. Ta-da! So it can be wiped down for sure, as long as they're not putting their mouth on it.
Right.
You can also make individual shofars, which is what we've done the last few years, which will be theirs personal, as a little tutor in it. And we go through the little sounds that it makes. And it's their personal one. Their name is on it, so they don't touch anybody else's. And that's what we'll do this year also. So it'll be their personal one that they can have pride in that they made.
Well, that's pretty fabulous too. Do you make it with like a kazoo-like thing, or is it just?
We make it how you have the blowers for like New Year's.
Uh-huh.
And then we make a shofar shape that they paint. They can draw on. They can put stickers on, and then we wrap it around there, glue it together, and it's their own certain one.
That's
So
great.
then we march through the synagogue with them blowing the horns.
So I learned something so beautiful this year. We were just, I did a Rosh Chodesh event with a lot of the women of our synagogue, and we had this fantastic rabbi talk to us about the shofar and how the sounds really can carry our deepest feelings and prayers on the sounds up into the heavens. And it was such a beautiful concept, and the way she spoke about that. And to have children really think about that it's not noise, right? That there's ideas that go with the noise, that we pay attention, that it is supposed to open up our hearts and souls, and that there's an urgency of the sounds, the three different sounds. That tekiah, the long sound, it's more like, listen, listen, pay attention. And that shavarim, the three, to-do, 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 it's like, it should sound a little bit like crying, like, oh, but also I'm pouring out my heart and soul. And even very young children, I'm not saying that they understand pouring out your heart and soul, but they can understand like thinking, wishing, right? And really paying attention to something and waking up. And it's really fun to have them pretend to be sleeping and then blow the teruah, which is the do, 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 like that's a real like alarm, like wake up, people. So really fun. I'm going to show you my shofar animals. So you were talking about the horns of the ram, and that is of course the most common one, is the horn, which is mine, the horn of the ram. It has to come from an animal that already grows a hollow horn. Like even though there's crud in it, it does have to really be hollow. You can't take a deer horn, for example, which is not hollow, and then like grind it out. And it has to be from a kosher animal. And you've probably seen those very big, loud, curly shofars. That's from an animal called a kudu. Kudu? You do. It's an antelope, and it is a kosher animal. Not that anyone I know eats that on a regular basis. And we cannot make it from a cow or a bull because it would be too reminiscent of the golden calf, and that's a no-no. But this particular rabbi also taught us, believe it or not, that she puts a mask on the end of her shofar because she doesn't want, it's the same thing. It's those delightful droplets that are getting in the air. So, consider too with children, like how are we making that safe? Can we put gauze inside it? Like, how are we protecting each other from these delightful sounds that children are making? It's hard to imagine that's a thing, but it is. So now I just want to talk about through the ages. I don't know who teaches what age, but we're going to go through this. And, you know, all of these things you can be adapted older or younger. So, you know, if you're teaching an older grade and you're like, okay, get to the good stuff already. But I also like to think about what's a Jewish value that I can learn alongside with all these things other than Rosh Hashanah. I'm very big on just like values that carry us through the year. So when I think about babies and toddlers, I think about them learning joy, the joy of the holiday, simcha, that Jewish holidays are an occasion for celebration and joy. And of course, for little ones, we want them to recognize the symbols of the holiday, right? So the aromas, the textures, the sounds. And you were talking, Cheryl, about having the shofar out and, you know, squeezing a honey thing is very good for children. I'm going to send you a list of some of these books, but what are some of the things that you can do? You can put apples floating in water. You can have leaves in a sensory bin. Certainly hearing the sounds of the shofar, though it can be scary for young children. Beeswax, that really interesting texture, making Play-Doh with cinnamon. You know, these are great sensory things, and kids of all ages love cards. You can make sticky collages with placemats. I'm doing, you can do, make placemats or challah covers or tablecloths with stencils and really cover over the area and let them use those fantastic dot paints that all they have to do is, you know, do that. You can make applesauce, do peekaboo boards. One of the things that Rosh Hashanah, the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is about thinking of taking a snapshot of yourself at your best. What does that look like of you and your family when everyone is just doing just what they should? When my family, if just somebody at this moment in time could snap that photo. So another fun thing to do would either be to make funny faces. I wonder if you can see this. You know what? I'm going to take off my background because you won't be able to see all the fun and festive things that I'm going to show you today. Now you get to see my office. Oh, but before I go, just if you're teaching virtually, it's really fun to tell stories with different pictures in the background. This is how I tell stories instead of with a book. If you're doing on virtually, I was telling the story of the two brothers or sisters that grew up on a farm and how they used to run and play and get together for Shabbat and where the farm is. And you can tell the story as you go through the pictures in the background without really having to hold up a book every time.
I love that. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's really fun. So this is my office. It's like got all my toys in it. But what I was going to show you was my very festive, just, you know, I have a lot of boxes come to my house because I don't go anywhere. So this can be like just a picture frame that's made. You can make funny faces in it, which I do. Oh gosh, I just remembered that was recording, but I do that all the time. You know, kids of all ages like cards, just opening cards, just like the concept of opening a card, putting something in an envelope, taking it out, opening up, that's great. Again, one of my 1,000 boxes, you could make a post office for your classroom. You know, if you are teaching virtually, you can mail things to the kids. That's always fun. And talking about recognizing all of the, you know, all of the things, this is my fun matching / memory board / tic-tac-toe board. I made this in like 3 minutes. It's not that difficult. I'm sure you could do just the same. And again, if you're teaching virtually and you want to make things that and mix it up and then mail it to your family so you can play bingo, that's really fun. You need more than the 9 images. It's really better for 12 so that you can really mix it up. This is also, like I said, great for tic-tac-toe, which is now Miriam's obsession. I talk about her all the time. She loves tic-tac-toe, so we'll be playing it with apples and like the little bee, or or the honey pot, and I'm sure that would be really fun too. Okay, so we're going to move on. So that was all just like babies, toddlers. For twos, we can think about new skills, new words. And again, I'm talking about, you know, babies, twos, but you can see how this could be appropriate really for any age. But we want to help twos strengthen family relationships and taking responsibility, teaching table manners, setting the table. They can certainly do that at age 2, and having a comfort with classmates. And, you know, you're going to have a teeny challenge, nothing you can't overcome. Like everything is going to be very, very new this year, right? So between like the social distancing and masks and new things, many children are becoming accustomed to it. But just to think about it in terms of the new year and new skills and new ways we're going to do things. And at this age, they can certainly dip apples in honey, and they can talk about the colors of apples and sizes, and tasting new foods is a great skill and a great sensory activity. I have to tell a story. One year I went to a school and they made apple pie and applesauce, and they measured children by how many apples tall they were, and everything was apples, and it was so adorable. And I said to the kids, and these kids were 4, and I said, "Hey kids, I see you have a lot with apples. What's the story with the apples?" And the kids said, "We have no idea. We just think our teacher likes apples." So just to come back to whatever you're teaching, make sure children know why you're teaching it, that it's something we eat on the holiday when they're a little bit older, to think about the fact that it's sort of the shape of the world, especially if you bring round apples into the room, to think about that. And so always remember to come back to, why am I teaching this? Is it just to recognize it's part of the holiday? If that's it, great, just as long as they know that it's part of the holiday. Certainly kids at this age can set the table, compare photos from last year to this year. And that's also something great you can do online. Ask families to send in pictures of them from last year and this year. Have them compare clothing, throw out things that don't fit anymore. Think about what they can do. They're like so big and grown up. And if you start like this big tablecloth or challah cover, this is something that you could do over the course of several weeks. And then maybe even at the end of the year, you might have or at the end of the semester, you could have an auction to see what family wants this prized artistic possession for their home. They're certainly capable of learning Shana Tova, maybe tapuchim udvash, apples and honey, and going on a tashliach walk and practice throwing things away. That's going to be great fun. And you can do tashliach in so many ways. We'll talk about that too. I just want to make sure that I'm time-wise. Okay. I know that I talk fast, so if you have a question, please. I don't know if anyone, we're going into 3s, and I really want to talk about friendship, fixing mistakes, sharing, empathy. These are all very difficult things for people of all ages, sharing in particular. I just read this really cute book, Claudette. Do you know this book, Claudette? I see, okay, so Annie, it's such a really adorable thing about this little cloud who's kind of too little to do anything, but the cloud gets blown into a new neighborhood, and the cloud tries with all her might, and she finally rains on some frogs and makes a pond, and they're very happy. So it's just like kind of a great lesson of whatever your age is, you can contribute to the world. So whatever it is you're doing for the world, you can contribute. By the time you're 3, oh, and All the World, you know that book, All the World? Gorgeous book.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, gorgeous book. Just enough and not too much, about, you know, really being happy with what you have. And at this age, 3s are certainly capable of understanding round shapes, probably 2s also, but rounds, challah. Miriam and I just braided our first round challah. Miriam was extremely helpful. But at that age, at 3, you can also compare tart and sweet, so the different kinds of apples and the flavors. A great like sensory bin would be with oats and cinnamon sticks. You really get the smell of the holiday. Again, I love water tables. I don't know if you're allowed to do water tables in this environment, but if you each have a bowl of water, you can certainly work with other things that float, and apples certainly that float. Working on skills, new skills like putting on your coat and buckles and zippers. Ooh, feely bags. I love feely bags. So you can have a small one and put small objects in it for kids either to feel and try to figure out what's in it, or if not, you could give clues if you're doing this virtually. What's in here has a stem and then a space to hold liquid, and it's silver and it's decorated. Anybody have a guess yet? You know, you can show the little shape like that. What do you think's in here? Yes, it's my kiddish cup. This is like my little mini kiddish cup. Right. That was okay. I digress. I used to buy my girls a different silver kiddish cup for every Passover, and so we have quite the collection. Again, like putting a shofar in, it's such a beautiful shape and such interesting textures. And how you make a shofar, it has to be boiled, it has to be bent, it has, and sometimes it has to be unbent if the bend is not right. It has to be buffed. It has to make a blast, a lot of B words. So great ways to explain the shofar with lots of B words. I'm going to move up to 4s. So with 4s, I wanted to think a little bit about cooperation, shituf pe'ula, how we cooperate and how we work together in a community. I know a lot of people like to talk about bees this time of year because of honey, and that's great. I love bees, honeybees. But again, why are we teaching it? And one of the things that I love to teach about honeybees is that they work together in a community, right? It's a beautiful thing, how they work and how they create this fantastic thing, this honey, and how they pollinate flowers. And the world would not exist without them, right? Plants would die without the honeybees. So they're very important to the birthday of the world. It's one of the birthday gifts that continues to give to the world. You can certainly read Apple Days, and that's also about the seasons, and this one little tree helps others. Oh, that's the Apple Tree's Discovery. Apple Days is this great book about this little girl who wants to make applesauce, and her mother goes away and she's so disappointed, and everyone in the community gives her an apple. It's so cute. I love it.
It's adorable.
So adorable. Another thing about community and bees, I don't know if you've ever seen these. These are, they're really meant for your drawers, you know, to like put socks in or something. They come like this, and then you put them together, and they're not expensive. But what a fun thing for either matching games or storage, or putting it on the floor and trying to, you know, throw things in it, or counting, or thinking about your job chart. And, you know, this could be like the way that you think about what jobs people are doing in the classroom. Okay, I love these things. Can you tell? Another book that I just read, it's not actually a book, it's a story. Do you know When Mr. Pot Cracked? When Mr. Pot Cracked, fantastic story. It's by a woman named Vered Hankin. I will send all of my notes to you because this is a lot, but by Vered Hankin and Maurice Elias and others, they wrote a book that really helped children learn about social emotional learning. And it's the story about this young man who has to get water out of a well every day. And he has to walk a long distance, and the water is very heavy. And at the end of one day, while the boy was asleep, Mrs. Pot was bragging about how she carried so much water. And Mr. Pot said, well, I carried a lot of water too. And she said, oh, really? You didn't notice that crack? I bet you're dripping water the whole way. And poor Mr. Pot was so unhappy until the boy showed him will look behind you after he got to the well. And sure enough, he saw puddles. Do you know the story, Cheryl? And he says, no, look again. And because of the water dripping, there were flowers everywhere along the path, which brought everybody joy. So sometimes we focus on our flaws, but the truth is we all have something to contribute, and our flaws are beautiful too. And that's what it takes to make a community. So fours can, of course, I love water play. Okay, I'm really into water. Again, squeezing that honey jar, collecting leaves, doing leaf rubbings. We were talking about making pomegranate prints or apple prints. I only will use food if it can be washed and then eaten. I would never recommend using food that's thrown away, but you can use actual pomegranate juice as a stamp, or grape juice with apples, so that you can make this shape and not really waste anything. The idea is that the pomegranate seeds add up to 613, the number of mitzvot or commandments in the Torah, or as many good deeds, because children want to become good people. And I want to talk a little bit about simanim, the symbolic foods, before we even get to the next age. We're very aware of the concept of the apples meaning a sweet year, and the honey meaning a sweet year, and the apples can also represent Torah, and everything represents something else, right? We have a round challah to show how the year comes around. It's a cycle of the year. There are people that put birds, images of birds on their challah as a symbol of our prayers ascending into the heavens. But there are other ones too. Are dates and leeks and gourds, and yes, of course, pomegranates. And even just to identify these things for children on a virtual thing, I mean, these are glorious looking, right?
Beautiful.
There's even a Rosh Hashanah Seder. Everything has a Seder. Only Passover got famous for it. But this idea of eating all the different foods and what they're for. I've also downloaded a larger version of this. I can send it to you. But we eat things like, gosh, they're so tiny, so that our merits increase, our good deeds increase. That's for carrots. We eat leeks so that our enemies won't have any power over us. People eat beets and dates, and you put a gourd on the table so that, again, our great merits are proclaimed and last a long time, because a gourd lasts a long time. So, it might be really interesting, especially for older kids, to come up with their own ideas about what some symbolic foods mean, or what foods they could eat to create their own Rosh Hashanah Seder plate, their own things that have meaning for them. I mean, that really would be like an older fours and maybe kindergarten. And for kindergarten, again, just the idea of community, the kahila. And I think kindergarten can really think about introspection and reflection, having new perspectives, even buying those bug lenses where you look in it and you see things 1,000 folds, or looking through a prism and bending light, or looking through colored lenses, or looking at mirrors, trying to do self-portraits, trying to draw portraits of our friends, really trying to look at yourself, and what are all the different ways that we can reflect our image. Is it a mirror? Is it aluminum foil? Is it water? And what kind of tin? Is it a spoon? I know Miriam. Oh, have I mentioned her yet today? Sorry. She's very fascinated with the fact that one side of the spoon, she's right side up, and the other side of the spoon, she's upside down. So that's another great way to reflect your image, and just think about, help children think about who they are and what they're learning and what they're seeing, and how they see other people and how they see themselves. certainly for sensory children at this age, can actually knead the challah. Like they can go beyond the braiding at this point. They can slice apples, you know, if they're taught carefully. They can open pomegranates. And if the seeds count as symbols of what's good in the year ahead, how many seeds are in that pomegranate? Again, they can draw, and you can do this online too. You know, if you ask children to look in the mirror and draw themselves, or draw one of their friends that they see in one of these other boxes. If you're doing, you know, counting the pomegranate seeds, can they estimate how many there are? So, you know, great activities for math. I love the magic pomegranate. Do you know the magic pomegranate? This is a Penina Schramm book, and this is a chapter book, right? And it would take, well, depending on how well your kids sit, it would take several days to get through it. And it's definitely for older kids. I'm really thinking more for the kindergarten. But each of these three brothers go out to, you know, see the world. Each one has to find something, and each one finds a magical gift, a flying carpet, a magic mirror, and a magic pomegranate. And this magic pomegranate has magic healing powers, but it can only be used once. And so while they get back together and they show their gifts, and they see that some beautiful princess in some far off land is ill, and they decide to jump on the magic carpet and see what they could do for her. And the father says, well, I will, you know, give my daughter in marriage to whoever can cure her. And, you know, the guy that has the magic pomegranate is like, well, shouldn't I give up my gift? And he decides he will. And then she gets better and she says, nobody gets to choose but me. And I'm like, yes. Yes, making your own choice. But she indeed chooses the young man who gave up his gift because it could only be used once. It's a beautiful story, and it does take a while to read. It's a beautiful story. And it's by Penina Schramm. I love Penina Schramm. There's Tashlich at Turtle Rock, which is really fun, which makes a great story walk. And we actually did it at Adat Israel one year. So, you know, you can walk to different areas of the outside of the synagogue and do really fun things with that. I probably have that somewhere if anybody really wants the story walk version and the activities. And something called the heart-shaped leaf, which was recommended to me, but I haven't actually read it yet. But this little girl discovers this very interesting, unusual leaf, and it helps her think about who she is and how she can contribute to society. I will now take a breath. Again, I have like lists of all of these books and activities. I will show you, like, this is what my notes look like. And if you think that this is helpful to you, I'm just gonna show you in so right now it's rather boring looking, but this is how I have it sort of, you know, the books, the sensory, the activities. And if anybody feels this is helpful, I am quite happy to share that.
Great.
So,
Helpful.
Thank you.
That would be
It's very helpful.
okay,
Thank you.
sure. And then let's see. Okay, I did everything backwards. So my last, whoops. Chesney. I'll tell her on a call. Okay, I always just make sure they're okay. So, right, this was our last, and the circle was the what, and those are all the activities. Like if we really think about the why we're doing something, how we want to get those ideas across, and then the what. So we're now really at recap and questions and discussion. Like, I would love to hear some of what you have to say and what you have to think, and what is helpful that you've discovered, What's helpful that you heard today? What can I send to you? All of the above. Anyone? Yes.
So for me, the idea of Rosh Hashanah and that whole season is really it's new beginnings, and I think this year specifically it's very new beginning, but it's like a chance to reset and to like, okay, anything that we would like, that we may have done before, maybe we want to do something different, or how can I do, and we've done things that I really like, how can I do them differently or better, or do I just being able to reset your mind to say it's a new year, it's a new class of children, I haven't seen these children yet, no expectations of who they are, what they're coming to you with. It can be a little daunting, but it's I think that's one of the great parts of being a teacher. And for me, not being in a classroom specifically, I look at it as a time for me to reset my mind as to the expectations I have for the staff and for the teachers and what expectations they have of me, and that we can all just reframe all of it to make it, because it's a new start, a new chance, clean slate.
Actually, that's a fantastic way to look at it. I mean, it is traditionally a clean slate, right? That's the whole idea, is that we get, but to give ourselves permission to say, okay, whatever I've been dealing with, whatever stresses I have, I'm going to try to let go of that. I'm going to try to start all over again, and give ourselves permission to be good to ourselves. I think that's a really important point. Robin tells me that all the time. I always have to remind myself. She reminded me today, and I already forgot. But that's really important. So thank you so much for bringing that up, Marla.
And I think too, because Rosh Hashanah is so soon after we come back to school, and because things are very different this year, we should also take it slowly and kind of stretch it out a little bit more, because it's going to be a lot of change. And we always feel compelled to get through all the Chagim very quickly, but I think we shouldn't. We should really slow it down, because there's so much more for them to absorb this year.
Well, I think that's also really important. And if we really focus on the why is this important, pick something. Even if you pick one idea out of all of those things, one concept. I want to teach friendship. I want to teach empathy. I want to teach community. One thing. If you look at everything sort of through that lens, I'm thinking about community and the shofar. It's a call to all of our community. Like whatever that thing is, the food, it can just go through one lens instead of trying to cram everything in. Look at us. We've been in this, a lot of you I know, some of you I'm getting to know. We've been around for a while, right? Like it's taken a lifetime to learn this, and we don't have to give them everything in 2 weeks. Right. That's huge. What else? Anybody else want to share something they're really excited about teaching this year, or something new they intend to try? Or, the other thing is that a lot of us, including me, say, you know what, I've done this way for 30 years. I'm gonna keep doing it that way. But maybe it's an opportunity to try something new. Like that storytelling that I do with a virtual background. I never did anything like that before, but I've had to learn it, and I kind of like it. So, what's something that we've, come across because we've had to think differently, that maybe we really want to explore a little more. Maybe children can help make either murals for backgrounds, or I don't know. We're doing a Tashlich program coming up, and we have so many different ways of doing Tashlich this year, because not everybody can make it to the park. Not everybody wants to be at the park when there are hundreds of people there. So what are the different ways we can do Tashlich? We have video of people writing with sidewalk chalk. Maybe you can do that outside and then hose it down, or throwing disappearing paper into a bowl of water, or writing with bathtub crayons and washing it away. How can we be creative in that way with things that we usually do that maybe we're not going to get a chance to do? Robin.
I've been loving listening to all these ideas, and I think they are all fabulous. And Lisa, I think it's great that you're going to share the list. When Marla said Rosh Hashanah, and I heard the Hebrew, it made me think of Rosh, right? Your Rosh is your head. And that's two things you see in person, but also when we're on Zoom, right? We're all seeing each other's head. And it just makes me think of like your Rosh and your Peh, and just using that also in terms of the holiday. And seeing the smiling faces and connecting that way, either on Zoom or in person, and just made me think of that. And I just wanted to share, as a parent who had 4 kids go through Jewish preschool, what a blessing it was for me to learn from my children when they would come home, whether when they were very verbal and they would come home and share with me what they learned, or when they weren't so verbal and they came home and brought me things. And how every year, all the holidays, I bring out all of their preschool things, and we use it every single year for all of the holidays. So what you're doing every year makes a difference for years and years and years to come. That we just love all the things that you've made so lovingly with our children, that we treasure them so much on our tables, that you do. And I just wanted you to have that from a parent perspective, how much we appreciate you, and how much what you teach them, it just grows with them, and impacts a whole family.
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all for spending time with me on an evening. That's not easy either. So I do want to say, and anybody who takes the time to watch the video, thank you too. We do appreciate it. I'm just going to share this last screen, which is my contact information, which of course I will send to you afterwards, but I am llittman@jewishlearningventure.org, the longest email address of all time. You can contact me at any time. I will send you these things. Again, if you are interested in doing something similar for Sukkot and Simchas Torah, I'm really happy to do that. I love Sukkot. I'm all about it. I'm already growing things and cooking stuff from like my garden to freeze and have in the sukkah. I'm really excited. And that's a fun holiday to explore with sound and textures also. So great.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much for your
Thank
time,
you.
Robin. Thank you for your help. Thanks to all
Thank
of
you,
you.
Lisa. This is really great.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
And Shana Tova.
But not too
Shana
bad.
Tova.
Oh, I'll send you a list of these songs too.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
Bye,
some of you
guys.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
See you tomorrow.